Hi everybody. I'm Sasha. So thank you so much for stopping by for the talk. It was really exciting to see everybody. And I was really fortunate to be a Rookies winner for game development category last year. And I was at the time studying at Noman, finishing my degree in game development, which I have graduated from about 4 months ago at this point. And now I'm working as an associate environment artist at Lightspeed LA.
Wow,
Yeah,
really cool. Thank you. And we'll be talking
that's
more
a
about
little
that.
bit.
We'll get into
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah,
we're gonna,
I'll
yeah, cool. So we're just gonna dive into the questions. We
Mhm.
have got some prepared, but this is really your event too. If anyone watching, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. And if it kind of fits into that point, we'll kind of fit it in. If it doesn't, at the end we'll have Q&A as well, and just repost it at the end. Um,
Mhm.
So we'll first start with rookie awards, and then we're going to go into more of your art growth and also your role at the moment. I think let's just start with the visuals. So would you mind like pulling up your entry that you won in
Of
2024
course.
and kind of tell us, what happened and like a bit about it as well?
Mhm. Yeah, so this was my entry for last year. I ended up submitting two of the game environments that I was working on at the time. And it was, yeah, the abandoned church and the Persian village. I'm not going to scroll through the entire thing since it was very, very, very lengthy submission. At the time, at least, that was my worry. But yeah, I was just trying to put as much of love and effort into this submission in terms of just trying to match the quality of professional environment, like work pipeline, like show that I'm ready for work and I am able to showcase some of the techniques that would be used in production, but also at the same time, just trying to put a little bit more personality into it. So yeah, and it was definitely incredible experience just being able to put everything as a summary of what I've gone through and like how much work was went into the project. I think this is where I really love and appreciate rookies because a lot of the times as artists, I think we're like, oh, the behind the scenes doesn't matter. We just have to get this final beautiful piece image and just like put it out there onto the world for judgment, but we don't show how much work went into something. So I really love that it gives you the opportunity to really dissect everything and for your own understanding as well. I know some of the instructors at Noman are always telling us the best way to learn something is to kind of try to explain it. And this was definitely me learning much more about how I actually created my work by just like trying to phrase it in a way that would make sense to somebody else who would be reading this. Yeah. I know I said I'm not going to scroll through the entire thing, but I'm trying to get to
It's
the second
beautiful.
piece. But yeah, if you have any questions also about it, let me know because it's just so broad and it's also so jarring to look at it after so long. Um, that yeah, if there are any specific questions, would love to answer.
Yeah.
But
What's kind
yeah,
of
here's
your
the second.
key advice for anyone who is submitting from your experience?
I think it was super, super helpful for me to look at the previous submissions and just kind of see. It's always so inspiring to see what incredible work people have put out before, but also look at portfolios and the work that is currently being done by professionals in the industry to just kind of see like what's the standard right now that you're trying to match and that so what is the level that you aspire to, and then also try to put like your personal twist on it. And I know it sounds like a lot, and I don't know, when people say, "Oh, this artist like really has a style or something," I like I don't know. I never think of myself as somebody who does, and that's always one of my biggest worries. So I
Really?
guess the entire time I was like, "What is my style? Like, do I have something consistent going?" But I guess
You do,
trying
definitely.
to yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. But I guess trying to like show your presentation in a way that's consistent and interesting to the viewer. Because in the end of the day, if you have a very long submission, you want to be able to capture the audience to keep looking at it for longer. Um, yeah, and I'm seeing some questions popping up. How long did the modeling take? I'm going to assume for either of the projects. The abandoned church was my first time ever modeling for games specifically, so that was a doozy because at the time I was getting inspired a lot by game submissions from other students for previous rookies years, but I haven't actually taken an environment class when I started that environment. So it was just kind of me asking a lot of people questions for advice and learning modularity and learning optimization for games as I went. And then I started taking classes and I started redoing a lot of stuff. So the Abandoned Church project definitely took me the longest any project has ever taken. And but the this one was a good standard of like gauging how long things would take. I think it took me like 2 terms, one term to fully get all the stuff blocked in, and it looked very different by the end of that term.
How
And
long
then the
is a
second term,
term?
I was
Sorry.
just a term at Nomen is 10 weeks.
Okay.
And I think at the very end, I have progress scroll of, yeah, this is what I had by the end of the first one. And then I just wanted to really change the mood and the setting and give more like storytelling little tidbits here and there. So that took me another term afterwards as well. And I feel it always feels like the last 10% take like 90% of the time. It's really annoying. But it's the funnest part of the project. Okay, how long have you been doing 3D before submitting for the rookies? I submitted for the rookies. I was going to mention this later, but yeah, I submitted for the rookies actually 3 times throughout the 3 years that I've been learning 3D. So I came to Noman in October 2021, and I graduated in December of 2024. So yes, overall, I think what 13 terms at Nomen, and that was my. I did dabble a little bit. I took like a ZBrush week-long class just to see if that actually was something I wanted to do before going to Nomen. Um, before I invested so much time and money into it, but also, yeah, I was able to just kind of have a lot of fun with it. And then I spent probably like 2 months or 3 months in just like trials in the software, just figuring out 3D a little bit on my own. But granted, when I came to Nomen, I still didn't know what like vert is. And yeah, I didn't know any of the basic 3D information. I haven't touched Maya at that time. So overall, I would say 3 years or 2.5 years before the submission. Okay. I did not use PCG to build my environments. I am not more tech art oriented. I'm a little bit more on the artistic, artsy side. Um, oh gosh. Okay, sorry. So long. So many questions. On Substance Designer, was the entire glass made in one file? Um, it was in one file. Yes, I did have um, so much information like that would lose detail because of how big it is. It was ginormous. It was in one file. It was not smart of me, but I ended up making just like a very giant map size. Now I would break it down into modular sections. I hope that helps, and I hope my answer is clear as well. I was curious about the rabbit toy. You mentioned scattering fuzz cards on the model in Houdini. Couldn't find many learning resources online on this, and I wondered if you had advice on it. Honestly, Houdini is scary, but it's really fun to play with. I was really lucky to have a class on Houdini at Nomen. So that's just kind of where I was a little bit familiar with it to the point where I could do some basic stuff like that. But I don't think I would be the best person to give any recommendations on where to search like Houdini resources specifically. Yeah. Do you want to, in the meantime? Oh, okay, fun. I'm glad that that answered your question. Do you want to, in the meantime, carry on with other questions, and then
Yeah.
you guys
Good
can
idea.
keep putting questions in the chat?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for answering those, Sasha. And yeah,
Yeah, of
keep them
course.
coming if anyone has any. Um, So when we were speaking together before this event, when we met, you mentioned that applying to the rookies kind of gave you a mindset boost. Can you talk a
Mhm,
bit about like maybe what you gained from it? I know obviously you got a role later on, but just
mhm,
kind of your experience with that and maybe any challenges that you had as well.
mhm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it definitely gave me a mindset boost. First and foremost, and I think the most important way, it's I found out about rookies when I was just like trying to figure out where to learn 3D. And that's actually how I found out about Nomen as well. And so it was incredibly inspiring to see so much of the student work that looked like it could be out of any movie or video game. And it was so inspirational to know that, hey, like people out there can learn to create this stuff and it was accessible. And yeah, so that was probably the biggest inspiration and mindset boost in terms of motivation. But also just like seeing all of the incredible work is always so inspiring. And then on a more personal level, last year was actually a third time that I have applied for the rookies, as I already mentioned previously. And it was a huge encouragement to be able to literally see the documentation of my progress. So I have these pulled up. This was the abandoned church project that I submitted in 2023. And at the time, I remember I was switching from more film oriented classes because at Noman, I think we take more game specific classes closer to the end of our degree. And I was switching from them, from film pipeline work to games. So this was the stuff that I actually ended up having two submissions, one for film work, one for games. And this was my character piece that I did, and as well as there is like this giant mechanical octopus robot thing down below. And because I was really adamant about going to games, I didn't even think of submitting this submission at all that year. Um, and instead, I was focusing all of my efforts on this one. I was so excited. I was finally producing something for games. I was really inspired by The Last of Us, as you probably can tell. And I was just really happy with my progress. It was my first time putting anything into Unreal, first time using Unreal Substance Designer, and just yeah, I was really giddy about it. And then um, I thought that I was happy with it, um, and then the moment I submitted, my partner actually, thank goodness for them, ended up really motivating me to also submit all of my other work. And that really helped because this submission did not get drafted or anything. Like it didn't go anywhere from what I remember. But this one actually ended up getting highly commended on 3D animation and ended up winning for career opportunities DNEG category, which was the most surprising, unexpected thing. And it really helped me also just understand that from my perspective as a student still learning, I couldn't. Oh, I'm seeing Jonathan Menendez. Hi, yes, actually, yeah, the class was a huge inspiration from Jonathan's work on The Last of Us. So it was just incredible to, yeah, Jonathan is in the audience now. So this is so nerve wracking. Gosh. But yeah, where was I? It it was interesting to gauge that as somebody at my level, I like didn't know what exactly was still good at that time. So speaking of Jonathan, I ended up reaching out to a bunch of incredible people like him and ended up really bugging him for um, feedback and how do I improve? How do I get to make it look better and more interesting? And that definitely helped me so much in improving my work. As you can hopefully see, I think the comparison that I like to make is previously this environment felt more like just a blank canvas for something. And it was more of just, it is a building that kind of feels more like a film set that has been clean and dusted and nothing has happened there yet. But you can say that maybe in a few weeks, people are going to start setting up the film set to make it look more like an abandoned building. But here I was trying to much more focus on actual story and the feeling of the environment. Um, so I ended up putting in a lot more detail into this. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm getting carried away with the question, but you're talking
No, it's
about the
perfect.
mindset boost, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it was awesome to just see that documentation of my development as an artist. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That actually segues perfectly into where we're going next with art journey and growth. Just before we
Mhm.
go there, I think we have a few questions. One I'm just going to quickly answer. In case you looked enough through other people's work and also judging by your own work, did you notice a huge difference between school students like, so how do you say it? Genome? I don't want to butcher it. The school you
Um,
went to, sorry.
oh, Noman.
Noman, sorry, thank you. And self-taught
No,
artists.
you're
I've got a feeling we can't answer that question. Maybe Sasha, you can about if you notice any difference between other schools and your school and just self-taught artists. It might be a question for a judge, just setting that up there. But do you have any insight?
Yeah, I do think it's more of a question for a judge since I don't really know people's like backgrounds when I'm looking through work, but I do say that I was a believer and like I am still in the fact that it's all about your will. Like sometimes schools is not something that's really accessible to somebody to access. Um, but I do believe that artists are able to develop. There are so many resources online right now, and artists are able to develop their work to incredible levels. I've seen some self-taught artists that are completely just mind-blowing work, and I do think it's all depends on your own self. And obviously, school makes it much more accessible and just available right there at your hands. And you have to do much more like work of digging for resources on your own when you're self-taught. Yeah,
Cool.
hope that kind of helps,
No,
but
that's
it is
helpful.
more
Yeah.
of a question for judges.
Thank you. Then we got one more question from Jasmine. Do you want to at the
Mhm.
bottom?
Dealing with so many files, how do you ensure your assets are well optimized? Um, yeah, I did have to, as I mentioned before, I did have to kind of go in and re-optimize stuff and reorganize everything just as I kept going and kept learning. In the beginning, this abandoned church project was definitely a nightmare to handle because I just didn't know what I was signing up for. But yeah, you kind of develop a system over time. Just try to be organized from the very beginning. And in terms of optimization specifically, that's what you mean. Yeah, there are so many resources on like learning how to optimize. I do have to say, I was also trying because you always have such a short period of time at like learning and before you begin applying, that at some points I did also prioritize just getting like the most beautiful result out of it in terms of like time crunching. So I would make sure that I had assets where I was able to showcase if somebody asked in an interview, for example, how did you optimize this or how did you approach this? I made sure I had assets where I clearly could point them to my workflow and show that I could get it ready to like industry standard. But on some other stuff that was like later coming in, like filler pieces, I did end up just kind of prioritizing time. So some of it was not as optimized as I would have liked it to. But yeah.
Cool. Thank you. So we're going to move on to art journey and your growth. So obviously your work is absolutely incredible. I think everyone here will say the same.
Much.
And you've already talked a bit about how you kind of got where you are, but I think more in depth, like how did you level up so fast? Because I think you, by the looks of things, you really got there quite fast. And kind of what helped you the most?
I feel like tricky question because I feel like I was interested in art ever since I was a little kid. I didn't know exactly what area of art I was interested in, but I was drawing and painting. And in high school, I started doing photography, which my like high school photos just ended up getting me a part-time gig as a photographer in my previous university, a much more theoretical degree at the time. So I was constantly just trying to be aware and trying to get better in terms of my composition skills and lighting, and colors, and shape and form, and overall just trying to learn the basics of art. And I think that's something that cannot be underestimated because when I was starting to jump into 3D software at Noman, that base knowledge and kind of platform helped me to understand, well, at least not be stressed about the basics of art when I was jumping into 3D. Like, for example, in ZBrush, I was already understanding volume and anatomy a little bit because I used to draw so many, like mostly characters and people. So by the time I was dealing with ZBrush, I was mostly stressed about the UI and learning just like how to use the tools in order to portray something that I already kind of could imagine in my head. I think that was definitely, yeah, I think a lot of people right now, especially with tools being so available and you have all of the free trial versions, people can just jump into it. And it depends also on what kind of art you're approaching. So, and it was also my personal experience, so it might be different for everybody. Maybe somebody is going to dive into art for the first time through 3D and it's going to be fantastic. But for me, having a strong foundation of understanding all the basics was definitely, I think, a boost for the speed. And in terms of software, I just try to think about it in terms of languages. It's kind of like you want to communicate art first, something that would make the viewer kind of feel and understand something and see your perspective. And the way you communicate, it doesn't really matter. It's just different tools being used to express it. Um, yeah, I hope
Okay.
that answers it. But also, yeah, just helping. It was really, really helpful throughout my time at Noman learning 3D was reaching out to people constantly and asking for advice and asking for feedback and asking for the harshest feedback they could give because a lot of the times we're kind of blinded as the artist to what exactly we're doing. And audience, especially people from the industry who have had 20, 30 years of experience before you, are so much more like they're very willing and very generous with their advice. And they're amazing at pointing out something that you could have just completely overlooked.
Did you have any
Yeah.
specific kind of mentors or resources that were the most helpful to you?
Did you say mentors? Sorry.
Yeah, mentors or like resources.
Um, I think, yeah, like Noman was already an incredible resource. As I mentioned previously, Rookies was also an incredible resource. And I think I had, yeah, I guess, yeah, first and foremost, in terms of mentors, it's it was incredible because when I was in Ukraine, I was just this tiny kid and everybody from the industry just seemed like these like unreachable stars up in the sky that you aspire to be like them, but you also have no idea what exactly they do. Um and it was also insane to me that people get paid for doing art because I think I was coming from a background when I was surrounded by the mentality of, if you want to be an artist, you're going to be on the street painting, and you're going to be forever without a job and all of that stuff. But coming to Noman and all of a sudden having these incredible people teach you every single week and have them drive in from their studio and just explain to you how they do stuff in studio was incredible. And then also for the rookies, seeing that all of these wonderful, incredible judges are sacrificing their time to look through student portfolios and are willing to help out was really reassuring. And I think that motivated me to also be able to just message people and reach out. And that's how I ended up reaching out to Jonathan. At the time, we were also trying to establish a lot of events for students at Noman about the rookies and just kind of motivate everybody to apply because we thought it would be a great just encouragement for everybody and great way for everybody to keep their work on track. And so we ended up reaching out to him, and I also reached out to him for personal feedback. And that just kind of, even though I was terrified of reaching out, I was like, oh, I'm going to be taking their time. And yeah, I felt so nervous about it. But then seeing how giving and generous the artists in the industry have been, and a lot of them are now either my coworkers or my friends, um, is just truly inspiring and cool to see that we're in such a tiny industry where people are incredible. So that was definitely my biggest resource. in terms of everything. And in terms of other resources, honestly, I'm not even sure. There's so many. There are way too many to even list. There were a lot of books that I was looking through at the time, a lot of just also what was helpful going to old bookstores and like if I was working on the abandoned church environment, I was looking for stuff like not necessarily 3D related, but books on cleaning antiques and restoration of antique furniture. I
Ah,
think I have a book somewhere on that. And it was just having these most detailed photographs of like edgeware and other stuff that was really cool to learn from and just kind of grow your visual library as an artist.
that's very unique. I love that. I can actually see that
Thank
in
you.
your work now that you mention it. It's so
Oh,
detailed.
thank you.
So did you use some of those images to inspire like this piece specifically, or
Mhm.
okay?
Definitely. It was this piece was actually inspired by an existing space. It's called Woodward Presbyterian Church in Detroit. And it was already destroyed at the time because I wanted to also be respectful to any spaces of worship. So I was trying to look for something that already historically has been in a state of disarray. And then just kind of trying to put more story into it of who could have, found shelter in this place after the destruction and what could have the story been like, and just kind of change it up a little bit more. And um, I had this mental like image in my head. I did ended up doing so many paint overs, and every time I remember Jonathan gave me feedback, as well as a few other people, and every time I would like go home and paint over it and be like, oh, okay, like that's really interesting. They mentioned that, like I never even thought about it, and then just try to jot it down to see what my kind of like to understand how it would enrich the piece, and then try to recreate it in 3D. Sorry, I got derailed from your question again,
No,
but
that's perfect. I think you're a really great example for anyone watching who is doing Rookie Awards, of how you, Sasha, have the technical ability, definitely, but you've really
Mhm.
set yourself apart because you have that ability to like think creatively and create something that's very unique. And when I see your entry, like I love it. Like it's beautiful. But there's never a specific reason why someone knows that a lot of the time. At least for me, like obviously
Mhm.
composition and everything is absolutely amazing, but it's something that really grabs you. And I think hearing you talk about it and the fact that you had those books where you're looking at pieces of old furniture and stuff like that, it obviously translated, and I think that what gives you the edge. So that's good to know. I think that's actually quite useful to anyone who is going for the win um,
Mhm. Thank
in
you
the
so much.
event.
Really appreciate it. That's the biggest compliment because honestly, my goal the entire time is like I really want the audience to like be able to like feel something when they look at art because that's the whole point of art, right? Um, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
cool.
you.
Thank you. So another question about your growth in terms of
Mhm.
kind of habits and routines, because obviously there's
Mhm.
one, you know, part of just doing it, and then other people have kind of different routines and the way they kind of approach it because we all have busy lives and stuff. So do you have any specific tips or just insight into like what your habits or routines were in order for you to kind of
Mhm.
get to this point?
Yeah, I feel like it is such an individual thing, and different habits and routine can help everybody in different ways. So instead, I guess, just I'll touch on the importance of habits and routines in general. I never thought of myself as a person who can have very structured habits that they follow, but then I was in Vancouver at the time and I was finishing my previous degree. I was working part time as a photographer, and I was also scrambling to try and get a portfolio ready for entry into Noman. And I remember when COVID hit, the days started getting to the point where everything was just a ginormous blur. I was waking up at in the very morning and working, sitting in front of a computer up until it was already super late at night, and it was just there was no way to distinguish anything.
Hmm.
There was no difference between any of the days, which was really disheartening. And that's when I ended up reading Atomic Habits, a
I've read that
book
too. Yeah.
that became incredibly helpful. I'm sure it's a really popular one now too, which I'm really happy about because I
Mm.
keep recommending it too. And I remember one of the like super easy examples there. It's like you don't have to go to the gym every single day and exercise for an hour or two. If some days you just don't feel like doing that, just put on your exercise clothes or put on your shoes. And at that point, like maybe walk to the gym. But you don't have to exercise. But if you're already there, you might as well. And that mentality really helped because I would always try to, if I don't feel like doing something 100%, I would at least try to do something like 5% there. And just like sit down and turn on the computer and open up all the software. And that's it. But sometimes that's like mentally getting yourself there is the biggest hurdle to get over. So definitely adopting that mentality was really helpful. And in terms of habits, I know this is mentioned by a lot of artists, and for a good reason because it's really important. But definitely getting into a routine of taking care of yourself. I feel like as artists, we feel like art is never finished, and it is true. Like it never does feel finished, and also there is a thing of the more time you put into it, sometimes the more payoff you get. Um, but it's really important, and it was really important for me to find balance between just kind of being really hardworking, but also really taking care of yourself and recognizing when you're about to burn down, like burn out. Because in the end of the day, art is a marathon, not a sprint. And sorry, we have leaf blowers outside, so it might get a little bit noisy in the background. But of course, all the days.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, just trying to find balance between being hardworking, not slacking off, but also being able to sustain yourself in a way that allows you to do things long term. I think was super, super important because yeah, if I was close to burning out at Noman many, many times. And every time I had to take a pause, recognize that, okay, I'm not feeling well, either mentally or physically. I need to take a day to just recharge and, I don't know, exercise, go outside, eat healthy food, and get enough sleep. Because otherwise, when I would have graduated and was about to start my job, I would just physically have not been able to function. Um, yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you. Yeah, I can tell you're quite you've got your stuff sorted, I think. It looks like it at least from the outside. So that's yeah, thanks for the
Thanks.
advice.
I
Because
try, but yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say I try, but most of the time I'm pretty sure it's just me trying to also convince myself.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. We're just gonna end this art journey and growth section off with just a bit of advice, finished advice. Like anyone who wants to get where you are today, and maybe they haven't got 2D background or any art background in the past, um,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them?
I think just yeah, be kind to yourself. Um, don't be shy and reach out to people asking for advice. And the biggest one also, when you do reach out for advice, be very respectful and patient and just listen. Don't try to fight anybody back or justify your decisions. Um, and yeah, overall, just know that this is a long journey. And I think I personally had a lot of anxieties of feeling kind of stagnant in my work and not being like not seeing if I'm developing. Sometimes in the very beginning, like you're even if like your 3D journey or your 2D art, you might feel like you're not good enough or you're not there yet. And you're looking at all of these incredible works in ArtStation. You're like, man, like I will never get there. And I had that a lot and lots of times. But what has been super helpful is when I was a 2D artist, I would just kind of pull out my drawings from like a year or two or three ago and compare how much growth has happened that is more invisible on a daily basis. And in 3D, and a friend actually recommended that to me in my first term at Noman, was taking screenshots of your work at the very end of the day, every single day, or every 2 days or week, whatever measurement you want to use, and putting them on a PRF next to all of your reference, and just kind of leaving it there And then whenever you feel discouraged, bringing in works and screenshots from like a month or 3 months ago and really putting them side by side and seeing that you're not going crazy, like you're growing. Um, Progress is happening. It's just slow and painful, but you're getting there, and just you need to trust in it. But also, I guess on the flip side, it also really helps you keep track of maybe sometimes the work you're putting into your pieces is not giving enough or efficient enough of an output. So it was really helpful for me to sometimes also notice that maybe I have been spending so much time on something and it's not looking better. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, like I'm not using the right approach or the right technique. So don't try to blame yourself, but like maybe there are better tools for what you're doing or better approaches, and just kind of trying to also work smart, um, and maybe reach out for your friends or people in the industry of like how would they approach something, or yeah, I think that was really helpful for me personally, just constantly keeping track of my growth and progress. um, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. You say
Yeah.
no, don't throw away your old work. Basically, that's a habit I think a lot of people
Yeah,
have.
exactly, yeah, and just like as like rookies, like document it and document things along the way, specifically advice for like rookie submission specifically. I think whenever I was working on something and I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like I remember I was working on the stained glass, and which was inspired, yeah, by Jonathan's work, and it was I learned so much from his breakdowns. I think he ended up posting a lot of ArtStation breakdowns for it. It was really cool to see, and at some point I was playing around in an Unreal, and I was like, oh, you can like see this cool effect, and I was like, oh, let me like
Mm-hmm.
screen record it or like let me render it out, and that's gonna be my um, rookie submission little tidbit. Just
Mm-hmm.
constantly documenting something, and honestly, yeah, the most important advice I almost forgot about is just work on something you're passionate about. Work on something that you're excited to get up in the morning and run to their PC and start working on it. Or I guess if you're a 2D artist, or like it applies to anything really. I was really excited to tell a story, and also I love the amount of research that goes into every piece and how much I would be learning about. Like for the Persian village, I was learning a lot about Persian culture. My partner is Persian, so I was just trying to learn as much about the beautiful culture as possible. Um, yeah, work on something that interests you and something that you can grow from as well, as a person. And don't be afraid to take on a challenge. I remember I was getting feedback from one of my mentors and instructors at Noman for this piece, and he actually mentioned it to me previously that he would talk to me about it, and he would tell me some things, and I was like, yeah, like, like don't show, I don't know, let's say for example, like this shot, it doesn't make sense, like there's not much happening. So then he would be like, well, the normal thing to do would be to just cut out that shot and focus on other stuff. But I really loved the challenge, so I would go in and I would just try to put in as much detail and storytelling elements into like everything as much as possible. Which honestly might not be a good advice. It depends on the project you're working on, depends on the person too. But that's kind of all of the little things that I ran into in my progress of submitting this submission.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, I guess we can move on to you breaking in the industry then. So let's
Mhm.
talk about you getting hired. So how, for anyone who doesn't know, how did the opportunity at Lightspeed come about?
Um, it definitely, as I mentioned before, yeah, like 50% effort, 50% on like timing and luck. It just so happened that the people I was reaching out to constantly for feedback and asking for help, and then going back and kind of following up on all the feedback and incorporating it in my work and then showing it to them again, um, were hopefully seeing that I was really eager about it, and I was trying to kind of grow attention to detail in myself and understanding of the pipeline. And it just so happened that they either knew somebody or we're working at a company that I'm currently at. So definitely was really fortunate to come across a connection and opportunity at the right time.
Yeah, you say you're
Yeah.
fortunate, but I think that actually says a lot about how much networking is
Mhm,
important, because if you didn't do that, that would never have happened. I understand how it
mhm.
can feel kind of like fortunate that you reach out and someone just has an opportunity, but if you never did that, like they would never have given it to you. So it's a good example of how putting yourself out there can really help get you the role if you have the
Yes,
skills.
100%. Yeah, it's definitely I do see a lot of um and I was one of those artists as well. Like I was really, really shy and I was really nervous to reach out to anybody and I just constantly felt like that would be at a like an inconvenience to other people. And at the time I ended up taking like a president of a club position at Noman and just trying to deliver as many resources to like my friends and everybody around as possible. And yeah, my friends and I were working on just like organizing a bunch of events and reaching out to people. And that point, you just kind of had to get over the anxiety and start talking to people. And as I mentioned before, yeah, realizing how welcoming and nice everybody is was definitely a breaking point of okay, like we as artists really should try to connect more with other artists and yeah, just like network more, even though it's a scary, scary thing, but it's really not that scary once you just do it.
Mm-hmm. We've got a really great
Yeah.
question based on that. How was your approach
Mhm.
reaching out to the artists?
In terms of the approach, it kind of came about organically. I did go try to attend a lot of events or conventions in the industry and would just try to walk up to the artists. And one thing, like, never have any expectation of like getting any advice or anything from a person. So I would just try to walk up and just always, hey, like, thank you so much for your work. I really like that's what has been inspiring me, and that's what brought me to where I am today. So a lot of the artists that work, for example, on The Last of Us and Uncharted series, I got into games really late. So when I played them more in like 16, 17 years old, that was a completely, well, I know that's not late, but you know, I feel like on the average American childhood, it was pretty late. So that was completely changed the direction of my life. And coming in to tell people that, I think it really goes both ways. That people love hearing that something that they put so much time and effort and love into is something that does help other viewers around the world. And it means something more than just, oh, it's like an entertainment piece. It's also, yeah, it's very meaningful.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Still on the topic of getting your role, I know you found your
Mhm.
role with networking and finding someone who had opportunity, but I imagine you still had the application process and stuff. So would you mind,
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people here haven't ever experienced that, so would you mind kind of talking a bit about that, your experience, and maybe any tips?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I did go through the application process. And at the time, I was also just applying to studios in general. So, yeah, I guess in terms of like application for your portfolio advice, just try to put your best foot forward and try to kind of, sorry, I'm reading also the questions. I'm going to
That's
close
all
the
right.
chat for a second. I'm definitely somebody who gets distracted very easily. Um, but yeah, try to put your best foot forward. And I know it's really hard because there's so much incredible work out there, but try to kind of put your personal touches into your work. Um, in terms of application for, yeah, just have a lot of patience and faith in yourself. I did get a lot of rejections also. And, you know, it is a rough industry right now. And there are so many people that are incredible, but just have faith and you are doing the best. Like my, oh gosh,
All
sorry.
right.
Like, what do I give advice? I just remember all the stress and anxiety that, and like so many of my friends are going through like job hunts right now.
Hmm.
And it is incredibly stressful, but yeah, it is important to not get discouraged and just remember that it's not you. Sometimes it is just the timing is not the right timing.
Hmm.
Um, yeah,
In my experience with being hired, I've only ever been hired through roles where I have networked through someone. And that's
yeah,
obviously come from a point from zero, right? It's not because
hmm
obviously I think when you mention that, some people might imagine like, oh, you need connections to order to get anywhere, but everyone starts from zero. So the fact that you did
yeah.
find your role through, don't know how they're probably still an acquaintance even, but they kind of knew and talked to you. Um, do you feel like that was a quite a big kind of I want to say like plus, like a big reason why you might have found it easy to get that role? And like if
Mhm.
that's the case, then kind of what would you recommend more? Do you recommend still like applying to all these roles? Obviously, I think that's a great thing to do. Or is there any other ways that you found that maybe you could go about finding roles? Basically, is what I'm kind of trying to get to.
Yeah. I think just trying to do, and I know it sounds, yeah, just trying to do everything at the same time
Hmm.
is kind of the biggest advice. And just trying to, before this, I did an internship at Activision Hyman Studios. And that one, I didn't know anybody at the company. I did apply through an application process. And yeah, I ended up getting in for that summer position, which was an incredible like learning experience to also know what the game pipeline is going to be like, and being able to later say that, during the interview they ask you questions, and one of the questions that often comes up is like, how do you work on a team, or how do you work
Hmm.
in a group project or stuff like that. So it was great to already have something like that, and be able to give an example. But in terms of, so I did experience both the just applying through an application process, but also at the same time being recommended for a job. I think in the end of the day, I have seen both ways get people hired, and it is easier for somebody to be able to vouch that, like, okay, you're not um, a terrible person, and you're nice.
Mm.
You take feedback, you incorporate feedback. So it's always a huge, huge plus when somebody is able to kind of say that, yes, I've seen this person not just like, I've not only seen their finished beautiful work, but for example, I have seen them take feedback well, take criticism, go incorporate it, then ask for more and go incorporate it again. And I've seen that they don't get discouraged, they don't fight back, because in the end, it's always kind of a little bit of a mini art direction example. So when I was at Noman, actually, every time I would try to ask for feedback and I would reach out to a bunch of people, I was kind of trying to treat them as my art directors, of whatever they felt like would be beneficial to the project the most.
Mm.
I was just taking it all to heart. And sometimes, obviously, you will get feedback that's either unrealistic for you to incorporate in the timeline, or that might be just conflicting with some other feedback that you get, and that's always totally fine. But always still be very respectful and thank people for the feedback and the time that they took to give you advice. And just as long as you're doing something that's overall people can see progress and growth in you as an artist.
Hmm.
um, yeah, I don't know if that,
That's great.
I'm hopeful that that's helpful, but yeah,
No,
just
that
because
is.
I'm have a limited amount of perspective that I can also kind of reflect on and give advice on. um, yeah.
It sounds like you kind of acted as a professional even before you had a role. To me, that's what it sounds like. You were treating, like you
Yeah.
said, them as art directors, and you're already acting as if you basically were a professional. And I think that probably helped quite a lot.
Mhm.
So that's really great. You have a few questions. I'm just going to read them out because they kind of get a bit buried. Is that all right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
did you subscribe to LinkedIn Premium?
No, I did not. I think I did their like free trial, but to be honest, I never took the time to. Um, yeah, I remember it has like different perks, but I don't remember if I actually ended up using any of them. And then the free trial ran out, and that was it.
Okay.
Um,
Cool.
I,
Any advice on how to find these internships other than on the Rookies website? And was yours paid?
yes, mine was paid. Activision and Blizzard, they have a really great just um, ABK, like Activision Blizzard King. They have a really great program for students every single year. So I would recommend reaching out to, or not, either reaching out to the recruiters, or just also primarily the very first one step is checking all of the company's websites every single year. I think they start posting their internships usually around November, I want to say, to December. But I don't trust me on that. I might be remembering correctly. But I remember like at the end of the year, and then usually a lot of the internships are summer positions. So I was constantly, I had like a Google tab open where I had every single company, and I would check every day if like, do they have any updates? Do they have any internships? What roles do they have in the internships? And every year it fluctuates depending on what the company is looking for or what budget they have. So yeah, a lot of my friends did end up applying, getting internship roles, and yeah, it was a really great way to just kind of dive into industry pipeline before you graduate.
So you found yours through directly through like company websites? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
mine. I think they would also post it through LinkedIn. So just kind of try to make sure that you follow as many people or like companies on LinkedIn and other resources, but mostly I was checking on LinkedIn and yeah, company websites.
Okay. Thank you. Another question.
Yeah.
Do you think playing games can strengthen up your skills regarding 3D game art?
Um, Definitely. But also, I feel like this is a trick question. Um,
Mm.
it's if you're trying to justify like playing games every single day for like 10 hours and like, oh, I'm just doing research, that's different from, oh, I really love and appreciate games and I want to work in games and I'm putting a lot of time into learning 3D, but also sometimes I'm play to kind of keep up to date with the industry. So yeah, trick question. Depends on how they mean it. Um, but I obviously like I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't fall in love with games and if I didn't play a lot of them and figured out that that's exactly what I want to contribute and saw the just power of the storytelling of this medium. Um, but during my time at Noman in the 3 years, I don't think I spent more than a couple hours here or there playing video games. I'm pretty sure that, well, what helped, I did not, when I moved to Los Angeles, I didn't have a console. So I just did not play any video games during my time in school, which means that I'm really not caught up now and out of touch. And every time people are like, "What? You didn't play this game 3 years ago that came out?" I'm like, "Nope, it was my Noman time." Um, yeah, so take it as you will. I would say definitely play games, fall in love with them, and really, it really helps you once you're also know a little bit more about the production pipeline to walk around in an environment and be like, oh, I see how they build this and try to dissect it as much as possible. But I was also just using the art dumps that people would do from every games on ArtStation to try and dissect different approaches to games. Yeah,
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Thank you. That's actually I like that question. I think that was a good question. Um,
of course.
Last question on the breaking into industry section. Then we're going to go on to your life now. So I
Mhm.
think choosing Lightspeed LA in your application there, what do you think made your portfolio and application stand out to the rest?
I think, yeah,
And it's a hard one.
it is a hard one. Yeah, for sure. First of all, I do think that a ton of different people could have been in my position and could have gotten that role. I think it was the right timing. Um, and I'm not necessarily sure what like made my application stand out. I'm hopeful that I was able to represent that I am keen to put a lot of detail into my work and kind of pay attention to everything. Um, or try to pay attention to details, and that I was, as I already talked about previously, like taking feedback and incorporating stuff into it and treating even my personal projects as something that's like more art directed, where I can trust somebody's advice and just kind of try to incorporate it to the best of my ability, learn new techniques, and just kind of unafraid to use different tools. I actually ended up using my rookie submission, if I remember correctly, definitely during my internship interview, and I think maybe during my Lightspeed LA interview as well, where there were some questions about how exactly I approached some optimization or modeling or something, and I ended up pulling it up and just showing that, hey, like here you can see literally all of the process um, broken down and written out. So that was really helpful to have that, and you don't have to sift through your files and manically try to find something or explain
Mm.
yourself. But you have like visual clues readily available during the interview.
That's really cool, actually. I like that. That must make it easier to kind of prove your point because they can see
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, we got another question. Hey, Ash. At what point did you have to decide that your environment was done, and how did you come to that realization?
Oh gosh, that's the hardest one. Yeah, as I mentioned before, it feels like it's never done. I did redo it a few times. Here in my 2023 submission, I definitely didn't feel like it was where I wanted to be yet. And it was aligning with all the feedback I was getting. I was just didn't know what exactly was off about it. But I think it's important to set yourself deadlines. And at this point, there are some things that I would go in and tweak still, but I was also mindful of I need to not only have one really detailed piece of my portfolio, but I needed to have a variety, being able to show that I can do more organic pieces as well. So, for example, that's why right away afterwards, I ended up moving on to something more like this, which did have much more sculptural elements. And it was just a different type of workflow. And I ended up doing like a Vista map painting for it as well. And it was just, yeah, doing different um, stuff. I'm sorry, give me a second. But yeah, it is really rough to kind of know when something is done. I am definitely err on the side of polishing until it's probably already overdone. Like I really need to just move on to something else. And I've had friends who have a very different mindset about it, and they're just get it to the point where they're happy with it as fast as they can and are excited to just move on to the next piece. And I've seen both work out. I, because of my approach, I do sometimes get really anxious about am I fast enough? I feel like I kind of noodle too much with the details. But I also know that my strength is also in the details. So it's a double edged sword.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I think that answers the question really
Hope that
well.
answers.
Yeah.
There's no clear answer, basically. It
I think
all
that's
depends.
great.
As long as you identify your weak points and you identify your timeline for yourself.
Cool. Thank you. So now, life now, as an environment artist.
Mhm.
I understand that there's a few things you can't share,
Mhm.
but we'll try and ask.
Yes. I will be very careful because I'm new at the studio and I don't want to say unnecessary stuff, but yeah,
Yeah, that's totally cool.
in terms of in terms of like daily life as an environment artist.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I was gonna ask you a question. Sorry, I've confused you. So now that you're in the role, what does a typical day look like?
I would say, yeah, just like typical environment art stuff. Something that luckily no one really prepared before. My leads are incredible, so they give a lot of creativity in being able to take a project from like a block out phase to just overall game ready environments. So yeah, it's not anything like you wouldn't expect, I would
Hmm.
say.
Hmm. Okay, cool. So what's been the most exciting or a part of your job at the moment?
Mhm. Definitely, I still get a lot of like pinch me moments when I'm sitting at lunch with coworkers, or I'm just, I don't know, sitting and working, and all of a sudden the realization once again floods in that the people who are sitting right next to me are the people who have worked on my favorite games ever, and who like those games are the reason why I'm here today. And I have incredible coworkers who are just fantastic artists, and I'm learning from every single day. And for example, my partner hasn't played video games much, and we are now going on a journey of playing through the games that got me to where I'm today and got me to go
Oh,
into gaming. And then I would go to work and update them and be like, yeah, we're right now on this and this level. And then they'll
that's
tell me little
nice.
stories of, yeah, I remember we were working on this. And like just little behind the scenes stories of how they created the environments that I fell in love with is just still absolutely mind blowing to me. And I think it's going to be for a few years. Yeah, so that's the most
Wow,
surprising part.
that's so
Or not, I
cool.
guess, surprising. It's something that you would think, yeah, logically makes sense, but it still is unbelievable.
No, that's really cool. It's like an insider like view of everything. It's really cool.
Mhm.
Um, so last question on this as well, and I see you have like a wall of questions coming up, so we'll get to those in a second. Maybe get the Q&A. So what skills from school transferred well to the job, and what did you have to learn on the job?
Mhm. Obviously, what you can't learn in school is just overall working with like giant pipelines where all of the people's work comes together. I did try to simulate it as much as possible by like working on group projects and stuff, but I think the most important skill to take away from your school, and like granted, a lot of environment specific skills from Noman did transfer over incredibly well. And also stuff that I have learned from rookies, like from previous student submissions. I actually, I think, learned for the first time a lot of the just like little more standard environment art pipeline things, or at least I got preview from previous rookie submissions. So all of that transferred over really well. But the most important skill is just being curious to learn and being unafraid to approach different softwares. Because at Noman, it's not just environment art classes for environment artists. In the beginning, you don't know where exactly you want to go and what you want to do. So you end up taking animation and VFX and character classes, and all of that exposes you to so many different software and tools, and some of them are extremely daunting. But in the end, just knowing that once you figure out one, you can figure out the others too. It takes time and effort, but being unafraid and being curious to learn, I think that's the most important skill for anybody in general in 3D industry.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you. So I'm gonna do the last question now, and then
Mhm.
we'll go into Q&A. And this is just a reflective question. Like in hindsight, if you
Mhm.
could go back and give yourself advice, is there anything that you would have done differently, whether it's like not doing something or doing something?
Mhm. I think I try to be a person without much regret. The one thing I would definitely do differently though is go um, into the journey of learning 3D sooner.
Hmm.
Is I think I had about like 2 3 years of hesitation about it, and trying to justify that like this is I'm not going to be a starving artist. This is going to have benefit to my future, to like my family, and just to myself overall. Because at the time I was in a more theoretical degree that's was more, I guess, standard. um, yeah, so going sooner and being a bit braver about it would be something I would do differently.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Sasha. That was amazing. Thanks for answering all my questions. Now we can move to the people's questions. Do you want me to read out, or maybe you do a great job of just reading them out and answering them?
Yeah. I don't remember. Okay, we did Ash's question.
The
And
last
then,
one I think is under the art station link.
okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thanks for sharing your ArtStation link. Cool. Did you know the Rookies has a full portfolio? Oh,
Oh, the one
sorry.
underneath that. Sorry.
That's my
That's the
question.
bot.
Um, Most of your environment are based on real places rather than concept pieces done by other artists. Would you advise going down the same route? Would employers prefer that? Honestly, I am not sure how exactly I ended up with a portfolio like that. I did always look more towards concept art, and But then, yeah, I'm not sure if that's exactly what employers prefer. I It depends on the games and projects you want to work on. So, for example, at the time of the game that was the first game I ever played was Uncharted 4. I really fell in love with it, and it is more in like Last of Us, they are more grounded in real life environments. So that's just kind of the route that I decided to take for my portfolio because I was trying to replicate my workflow as much as possible for the job that I was applying to. But if you're, for example, want to work in, I don't know, stylized fantasy games, then definitely use concept art. Don't just try to morph a realistic environment into it, obviously. Um, but if you are somebody who, like, I don't think there's necessarily a benefit of working from concept art or your own interpretation of a real life space. I would probably try to have both represented on your portfolio. In fact, I was kind of constantly anxious that I'm lacking that ability to show that I can interpret a 2D image from a concept artist and create it in my own unique way in 3D. Um, so, yeah, hope that helps. Yeah. Okay. So, next question. Getting in the industry, do you have any advice on adapting to changes like the new tools? I think, yeah, what I touched on previously, just be curious and be unafraid to learn new tools because yeah, they are constantly changing, but you just have to kind of know the logic behind it, and then you'll be able to adapt from one to the other. And then when you make your projects, do you try to tailor them towards the specific studios you want to work for? Hi, Julia. Sorry, I already, I guess, answered it in the previous question, but yeah, I definitely try to. It's risky to tailor it to one specific studio, but try to kind of have this range of like one piece that's tailored to that studio and then kind of, I don't know, two pieces that are adjacent enough that you're also able to apply to a wider range of studios as well. Okay, and then how do you find legitimate and helpful networking event opportunities as a recent graduate with mentorship project finished and published on ArtStation? Legitimate and helpful networking events. I think I found it really helpful to go to things like Lightbox and GDC. I was very lucky to be able to get sponsored to go to GDC, and I know that otherwise it's really, really expensive and might be unaffordable to students. But trying to also find maybe like local networking events. I know I was trying to monitor always just like Facebook pages for game development or LinkedIn pages, and there are a lot of different industry events happening. So keep an eye out for that, and I think that would be probably the best advice. Um, but also, yeah, try to just have like genuine conversations with people and get to know people for who they are. Don't just show up to an event and like, here's my art station. Yeah. And then what is your view on third-party assets megascans? Seems like everything in your environment is done by you. Yes, except for these flowers and plants over here. At the time, I did end up making my own ivy, and like this is a grapevine tree. But for the time saving purposes, I did end up using a little bit for the touches, like finishing touches. So I think that yeah, like I don't really have much of a view. I try to make as much as possible on my own, but it is something that comes in handy on a time crunch. But obviously, always be honest about like don't try to claim somebody else's work or assets that you've downloaded or mega scans for your own work, especially because yeah, people in the industry have so much experience they're able to spot it from a mile away, and then you're putting yourself in a very disadvantageous position by trying to claim something you didn't do. Okay. Would you say it's a bad idea to do stylized as well as realistic pieces? I hear this a lot to not do that, but I really enjoy both and don't want to completely drop one for the other. Uh, um, I feel like, yeah, it is a rough question because to answer, just because the two are very different. And in the beginning, I was working a lot on like characters and environments, for example. So that's like the closest I can relate to that question. I think um, try to make sure that you have a solid finished portfolio in one. I probably might not also be the right person to give advice in terms of this because it also depends on the studios you want to work at. I'm assuming if it's a VFX house that probably like works on both animated stylized projects as well as realistic, then that could be really handy to them. But if you're like, my dream is to work at Blizzard, but I'm working on realistic and, or specifically, I don't know, my dream is to work on Overwatch and you're making also realistic environments, then it's like, well, you probably should be putting all of your efforts into one, at least for now, to get a job and a foot in the door. Um, so it depends. Honestly, it's a rough question to answer. I hope my rambling helps in any way, but I understand the confusion and hesitation with kind of what to put in your portfolio. I've been there. Yeah, if you want, like, also feel free to reach out to me, like through LinkedIn, and like if you're like, hey, like this is exactly where I want to work, and like what do you think is a good thing to put? I can try to give advice to the best of my ability, but again, I was a student three months ago, so I'm very freshly out of school and don't have enough experience to fully answer something.
So just to add in there, I feel like Sasha has loads of great advice as well. So definitely take her up on that opportunity to message her. But just to put in, we do have an event with Jonathan coming up, and it is a feedback session. And I know, Sasha, you've had great feedback for him, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to mention that. And if anyone, maybe Julia, if you have those kind of questions as well, like there's other opportunities as well.
Mhm. Yeah, Jonathan is incredible. Definitely go to this event. He has a lot of wise advice to share. Um, Ash, not a question, but I love your review submission. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate it. Means a lot. And then Nibir, would you advise showcasing different type of environments? For example, having sci-fi environment done with trim sheet and one post-apocalyptic with a lot of vegetation, focus on one type, since they're very different branches and it would take a lot of time to master those skills. Honestly, I think it is a good idea. It honestly also depends on like what your timeline is, but yeah, showcasing versatility is always great because in the game you're working on, you never know, um, or like at a company, you never know what the next project might be. So it's always great to know as much as you can and showcase that ability. Um, yeah, hope that helps. What was your first day on the job like? Did they give you workload right away or give you time to adjust? Just onboarding, traditional, like standard stuff of getting used to everything in the company. But yeah, everybody was incredible, and yeah, Lightspeed is just wonderful. So I didn't have like the terrifying experience of like, okay, we expect something by the end of the day. Um, yeah. Cool.
Cool. Thank you, Sasha. That was
Good. I
amazing.
think that's all questions. Yeah, I
That
see one
was.
more person typing, but
Yeah.
um,
Um, I'm thinking, should we wait? I don't know.
yeah,
I'm
I
in a
don't
bit.
know. The pressure is on. I always get so nervous when I'm typing and somebody expects the answer. So now,
Yeah, don't worry. I've had that a few times.
so
Oh, there you go.
stressful. How come I'm good as both environment artist and a character artist? Thank you. First of all, I really appreciate it. But I think just what I said in the very beginning of trying to incorporate my 2D knowledge also into my 3D work and knowing um, yeah, just understanding form and volume. In the end, it's all just kind of you representing that into a 3D space. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, I had just genuine interest to both. And so that was something that I was really passionate about. And I put a lot of time into trying to get better at both. Um, yeah,
Yeah, you can definitely see that in your work. It's really cool.
thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you so much, Sasha. That was an amazing event. It was actually really great on timing as well. Like we finished for the hour and then we've got a Q&A. If anyone has any other questions, is there any other place that they can reach out to you? What's the best place?
I do have LinkedIn,
Okay.
ArtStation, and Instagram. So those are like the three main ones. Probably I am more responsive on Instagram and LinkedIn.
Okay.
But yeah, whatever I can help with, I had so much advice and help that I got throughout my time as a student. So I would love to be able to give back as much as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I've noticed you have helped a lot of students as well, so we really appreciate that. Um, not, I know it's difficult being a student, and your ability to even help while you were a student, I think, is really amazing. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I mostly just am like, okay, direct you guys to and encourage people to reach out to like actual industry professionals
Hmm.
was be like, yeah, my best advice and motivate people to, yeah, seek out advice.